Hey guys, we're going to go over how to make a Snapchat filter. In this one, I'm going to show you more of the Waterford oriented one, and you can obviously modify to whether you're fine-tuning your business one or whether you're working on a graduation one. But this is in general how you would go ahead and create a Snapchat filter. So you have downloaded the template from the slideshow, and here it shows you some guidelines. You don't want to put important information in the top and bottom. Now that doesn't mean you cannot have information there. As you'll notice, the Sweet Dreams filter does extend up, but the text and the moon are below that buffer zone. Okay? Then you have the effect in here, and if you go through, you can kind of uncheck different elements to see what's on each layer. Okay? And however you want your filter to look is obviously up to you. And then of course the sample image. So the first thing is, if you don't want any of this, then go ahead and delete it and get it out of your way. But what we want is the same proportions of this document. And I'm going to keep my guidelines just as helpers until the very end, and then I will remove them. Now layer 1 is white, just to help your items show better, because I personally find the checkerboard boxes to be annoying when I'm creating, because it just creates that kind of buzz effect for my eyes. So I always start with making a white layer for my background, and then as I said, the PNG saves a transparent background, and we need to make sure that we don't have a background, because Snapchat, the way it works is your new picture becomes the background. So this is strictly just for creating, and then I will go through and delete. So the first thing you need to decide is where your text is going. Are you going at the top, bottom, both? And I'm just going to grab my text tool and type Waterford. Now, like I said, this one is obviously not going to be directed towards graduation. It's going to be kind of one of the new town ones that I can design and submit, and if you guys want to do that just as like a bonus, yours will of course be class of 2020. I can add that underneath. Anything I want. But right now I'm just kind of spitballing some ideas, and I'm going to start by just typing the word Waterford out. Now I have also downloaded the logos, so you can see them in my downloads here, and they are different from each other. It may not look it from the small images, but they are slightly different, so you pick whichever one you like, and I'm just going to open this one up to show you. And when you want to open it, there's actually two ways you can do it, and I'm sure we all know this by now. In the downloads, I can actually drag and drop and kind of hover over Photoshop, and it will open up in there. Now that doesn't usually work as easily on a PC machine, but on a Mac, that's one way to do it. Or you can go File, Open. And we should know that by now, and that is in Photopea or Photoshop, no matter which program you are using. So I have it opened in a separate window, so all I need to do is just drag and drop, and then it goes into this one. And you'll notice it's way too big, so I'm going to Command Control T or Alt Control T if you are using Photopea, and I'm just going to hit 50%, and then I'm going to go 30%, and I still even need it smaller, so I'm probably going to go down to 10%, and then I can apply that change. Now these logos are PNGs. There is no background to them, so if I uncheck the white layer, you can see that there is nothing to it. That is extremely important. Alright, so now I'm just going to move this down, and I'm going to do the W there, and then I actually don't think I want this text anymore, so I'm going to delete that, and then what I'm going to do is a new text layer, and I'm going to do Home of the Lancers. Okay, and now here is where typography comes in extremely important when it comes to creating Snapchat filters and anything else really, whether you're designing a business card, a poster. All of this is typography is extremely important in all of this. So I want Lancers to be more of a cursive font, and I had typed it all in one layer. Now I can modify this, and let me just pick one real quick. Now I can modify it and have it separate, but what this limits me in is I can't move it as freely. I can go into the character panel and I can fiddle with the spacing and all that, but it's just not as easy. So what I'm going to do is actually delete it from this layer. This is actually a little too big, so I'm going to edit this now. Let me just go down to 60. I'm going to change the font and everything later, because I want the style of it to match the W more so. So that would be a serif font, like Times New Roman, rather than the sans serif font that I have selected. So I'm just going to move this down here just for show, and again, still too big. So what I'm going to do instead of going back to my type tool is I'm just going to hit my free transform, and then I'm going to drag it smaller to fit. And that is just a little bit quicker of a way to do that. And I'm going to block this back in because it's bothering me. And then I'm going to have a new text layer, and I'm going to type Lancers, and then I'm going to go through all of my fancier scripts. Now I have a ton downloaded because I do this a lot, but if you can't find one on your computer or on Photopea, I've shown you in previous tutorial videos how to download a font and use it. Now this one, I really don't like the L, so I'm going to pick another one. Let me try this one. That's too small, so I'm going to jump this up to 100. Still way too small, so let's go 150. All right. It's a little better. I'm not really sure why the L is filled in like that. I really don't like that, so let's go back to the drawing board. And Magnolia is one I use a ton. And if you look, so it got bigger, I need to go back smaller. So if you look at this font, the tails and everything are not quite aligned very well. This one's too close, this one's too far. So this is what the character panel allows you to do. So the VA with the arrow going sideways controls your kerning, so your character spacing. So I can just click 5 and see what that does for me. It didn't really do much. So I think I need to go negative. And just kind of keep going with it. The L is still too close. I can always add a space there, and then I can highlight and kind of make this smaller, and it will get just a little closer, and then I can kind of play with it like this. If you really want a font and it's not working for you totally, then what you would have to do is kind of type them in different type layers, and then you can kind of line them up that way. So this looks pretty good. That's a little far. So I think I'm going to decrease that down to 40, and that's better. So, well, I want it to touch, I think. So that's good. All right, so now I want this to be blue or red. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my eyedropper tool, and I'm going to grab that red, and then I'm going to highlight and just toggle my arrows, and you can see that that is now red. And I'm going to change home of the to be blue, and maybe that needs to be reversed. Maybe it will look better the other way, but I'm just trying something out first. So I'm zooming in, selecting that, and then fixing this because it went back. I had the wrong layer selected, because what happened there is I tried to do home of the, but when I clicked, it selected the Lancers because it was so big. So if that ever happens to you, I'm just going to uncheck the eye there so that it goes away. Now I make sure I have the right layer selected, and then I go back. All right, so that automatically looks a little better. Now I can play with spacing. Okay, I don't really like that the red, what's it called? The lance. The red lance hits the red L, so what I'm going to do is reverse the colors. And that way, it'll be blue Lancers overlaid onto the red lance. Okay, and that's a little better for me. Now, you need to decide if you want Lancers to be in front or in back of your top text, so I can just drag that layer up and down to decide. I personally like it better underneath. And now is the time that I need to change this font so I can really make those good choices. So I'm just going to start with Times New Roman because I know that that is a serif font. And let's see how it looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, so now what I want is to align the Lancers to home of the. I want it to be the same width. And what I'm going to do is take this, free transform, My lock is selected, so I don't have to hold shift and just drag it out. All right, now here's a fun trick. If I select both of these, so I've got both of my layers selected, there's a little align things up here, and I can center them to each other, and that will align them perfectly. If I want them aligned to the left, then you can see how small it shifts over. Okay, so that is a trick to align them super easily rather than using your nudge tool. All right, so now I'm going to back up, and it is a little high for the buffer zone because the buffer zone isn't until here. So what I'm going to do is use my nudge arrow keys and just bring it down until it just touches the top of that buffer zone, because I don't want it to go too high because it would take a lot of my image. Okay, so that I think is pretty good. Very simple, but totally okay. Now, the other option, of course, would be if I wanted to put the W up top in the corner here, and then I wanted to make these bigger, so I can select them both, transform, and drag. And then that way it would fill the whole bottom, and then the W can just go up in the top there. So that's, of course, another option. You just have to think about how much space is inside here, because that is how much of your picture you're showing. To me, this is just a little bit big, and I liked the other way better. So all I'm going to do is use my history panel and then just go back. I want you to use what the information I gave you, thinking about the typography, thinking about pairing different fonts, and thinking about your placement within and any additional pictures that would show. Maybe I want to add some flare up here because I didn't do any of that, so I would use one of the border brushes. So if I want something to be just kind of in the top section, you want to go with one of the border brushes, but you could, of course, do the more intricate ones and not use the whole thing. That's the beauty of working in layers, is you can delete some of one layer and not show the whole entire thing. So I am going to just do the decorative brushes. So all I'm going to do is click on this guy and download. So now I can see the actual brushes a little bit better. And all I'm going to do is make sure I'm on a new layer. And I've got red selected. I'm not really sure if I want red or blue, or maybe I'll do both of them. I'm just going to go ahead and stamp it, undo, and go a little bit lower. And then I'm going to grab my blue, and I'm just going to butt that right up, leave a little bit of gap, and then that way I have just a little bit of extra detail at the top. And I can always choose a different one and go back. Maybe one of these would be better. No, I think I like the waves. So that's good for me. So this concludes my Snapchat filter, and I just want to uncheck this, check layer 3, and nudge it up as high as possible right under that buffer zone. Okay, so last thing you're going to do is I'm going to make sure the layer 1 is invisible, and I'm going to make sure that my guidelines are invisible. Okay, so I just check the eyes. You could also go ahead and delete the layer. That would work too, but as long as it's invisible, that will be fine. And now I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm just going to call this graduation filter because it's Waterford based, even though it's really not for graduation purpose. And then I'm just going to change this down to PNG. Make sure you pay attention to where you're saving it, and then go ahead and save. Remember that if you are using Photo P, you need to go to File, Export As, and then you'll have a PNG option here. Okay? and it's not in save or save as, it's under export. So just make sure that you're going to the right spot.